Alright, I'm back with more exclusive Nebulous Fleet Command carrier update footage, and this time we've got something really special. I've got a complete match showing carrier operations from start to finish. While my last video broke down the trailer, this time we're going to see how these new systems actually play out in a real game. But before we dive in, I should mention that everything I'm about to say is just my interpretation of what we're seeing. I don't have any extra inside information beyond this footage, so take my analysis with a grain of salt, but I still think there's lots of interesting details we can pick out here. So let's jump in. As soon as this video starts, we've got a ton of new information. So very quickly, the map is called Gold Rush. I'm pretty sure it's just a modded map, not a new map in the game, but we'll see. And we can see that the viewpoint character that we're watching here has just one ship in their fleet. It's a Moorline container liner, but in this instance, it has been retrofitted over to be a carrier. So there's basically two, I think, main options for the OSP to have as a carrier. They have their dedicated carrier ship, and then they can also put this container bank hangar onto the Moorline and potentially other ships that have big enough slots, but it's probably just going to be the Moorline in the main. You can see here that there's 4 container bank hangars on this ship, and we'll see in a second just how many craft that means it can carry, and you can get an idea of that by the fact that it is the only ship this person has in their fleet. So they've spent 3,000 points in this game, assuming it's a 3,000 point game, I'm guessing that it is, on just this ship and the craft inside it. The only other thing to show you here is if we've zoomed in on the modules, there is a TALS-2 Talisman launcher equipped to this ship. I'm pretty sure that is the 2 missile version of the one-armed bandit that was previewed in the developer log. I think we'll get a shot of it later on in the video as well. Just a quick one here, you'll notice there's a new flight button at the top of the window, and when the user mouses over it, this little radar screen appears. I honestly am not sure what this is. My only thoughts are it's like a landing takeoff radar view to show whether or not the launch pads are clear, but I couldn't tell you. It does say on it speed 20, crab 45, so there is a potential that there are 45 crabs approaching at speed 20. I don't know what this is. And here we have our first view of the flight operations screen in battle. I think ever possibly there might have been shown a little bit of this in a devlog earlier, but this is definitely the best view we've had of it, and there's a lot of stuff to take in. First of all, we can see that this Moorline is absolutely stacked with craft. Just in this view here, there are 11 bombers on screen, and there's a scroll bar on the right there that shows me that there are going to be more further down. My guess is there's 4 in each of the larger hangar bays and 3 in the smaller 2, for a total of 14 Sturgeons on this ship, and the Sturgeon being the bomber for the OSP. Some other things to catch is obviously there are Barracuda strike fighters and Halberd skiffs on this ship, but above the launch flight button there are 4 large green squares and 8 small green squares. I'm pretty sure those represent the launch pads for this ship, and you'll see as the video goes on they turn yellow as they're in use, which means that compared to the ANS carrier and the OSP carriers, the Moorline can launch 8 small craft at once and 4 large craft at once, which I think gives it a very scary strike potential. Being able to launch a lot of craft very quickly is maybe the real strength of this ship, just as well as carrying a lot of them. What we can see here is the players selecting a loadout to put on their halberds. Now, this is pretty big because it tells us and confirms that all craft start a battle sort of mothballed or in a half-ready status, where they're pretty much good to go, but they might need fueling and they may need the loadout equipped to them. Well, they do need the loadout equipped to them. This has a lot of ramifications. We know for a fact that one of the advantages that the ANS has in this update, one of their sort of asymmetric qualities, is that their deck crews are more well-trained than the OSP. At least they were in the devlog previously. That may have changed since then. So they can put loadouts on their craft faster than the OSP can. We also know that ANS craft have parts of their loadout that are fixed, that don't get changed out, so they are not part of this loading process. They're already on the craft. So the theory that I have is that we may find that ANS craft are faster to get into the void in general than OSP craft, which may give the ANS a slight advantage in the early game in terms of getting scouts and strike fighters into the void while the OSP are still configuring them. It may also mean that the flexibility of the ANS for quick turnarounds may actually come into play. In terms of what's being equipped here, you can see that the skiff has 1 loadout available, an 8-kilometer radar wake sensor. I'm not sure if that is a radar wake sensor or a radar and wake sensor, because it is something that they have named themselves. If it is, that means there's maybe 2 module slots on the skiff for electronic warfare equipment, which is very interesting. And I also think this would make for a pretty cool little scout craft because it's got such a small radar profile. Being smaller than a shuttle, it might be very good at hiding and just passively picking things up. We'll see how that goes as this level plays out. And finally, one last thing to notice is that this loadout will take 38 seconds to equip, and there are 20 of them available on the ship, which makes it, to me, seem like a pretty fast thing to turn around. There's a lot to take in here. First of all, between the 2 main hangars in this moorline, there are 22 Barracudas available, with another 2 hangars worth that we're not certain of the numbers on. So the amount of strike fighters that this ship can carry is pretty insane, and we have some examples of loadouts for them here as well. So we've got a Void Superiority loadout that will take 1 minute 43 to equip, a multi-role light anti-ship rocket loadout, 1 minute 53, a multi-role light anti-ship guns loadout, which will take 1 minute 43, and a backup light fighter bomber roll, which will take 1 minute 33, and there are different amounts for each one. So going back to what I said before, it looks like the skiffs not going to take very long to load out, 40 seconds. But these strike fighters, we're looking at almost 2 minutes for that anti-ship rocket loadout, which is quite a long time. If you think about how quickly things can change in Nebulous, yes, there are long stretches where things don't change, but when you get into combat, it changes very quickly. And if you've got craft on your carrier being equipped with the wrong loadout, that could go very badly for you in the long run. And as you can see here, once your ship has a loadout selected, it enters pre-flight, and you get a progress bar showing how close it is to completion. I think it's worth having a look at the loadouts this player has made for their Sturgeons, and I want to reiterate that these are all player-made loadouts, they're not preloaded into the game. There will probably be loadouts that come with the game, but these are all clearly customized by the player that we're watching. So they've got an anti-ship torpedoes loadout, which will take 1 minute to equip, a 100mm HE gun pods with bombs loadout, 1 minute 28, a heavy anti-ship rocket loadout, which will take a minute, heavy anti-ships rockets with something for 1 minute 35, and finally backup light anti-ship rockets, which will take 2 minutes. So the diversity and versatility of loadouts is really on show between the Sturgeons and the Barracudas here. There's a lot of options and different ways to configure these ships. It comes down to player skill to know which is the right loadout for the right situation. Small thing here, but if you notice the player just set their throttle to FQ, I don't know what that abbreviation stands for. And now they've set their throttle over to flank, and if you have a look at the back of the ship, just above the engines, you can see that double-barreled, one-armed bandit missile launcher that has been added in this update. And if you pay attention to the landing pads on the moorline, you can see those 3 skiffs we were assigned before being brought out onto the deck and launching out into space. And here we have our first clear look at the craft control panel as these skiffs launch from the moorline. Now in the left hand side of the screen at the top, you can see that each wing of craft that launch from your carrier gets automatically assigned a numbered control group, and you can add and remove craft from them using the detached buttons in the bottom right hand corner of the screen. The green bar that runs underneath the craft in the top left shows the remaining fuel for that craft, and that will go down as they perform their operations, and when they run out of fuel, they are not stranded in space, they will automatically RTB. So you can assume or identify that fuel bar not as the total fuel in the craft, but the total amount of fuel they have for performing actions before they have to RTB. And they will automatically RTB, and you have no control of them when they do so. So you never have to worry about craft, running out of fuel and just stopping. Now in terms of the control panel, first of all we can see the ship's armament. It has 2 35mm guns. That's a caliber that we haven't seen before in Nebulous, and it also has 8 SGM-161 craft crasher missiles, which are clearly a custom-made size 1 missile that this user has put together. Now in terms of commands, there are a bunch of commands here, some of which I don't know what they do. First of all, we've got the H-burn, which is currently off. That's for high burn or afterburners. You'll see that when this is used later on in this video, it eats fuel very, very quickly. There's a formation selector, and the one we can see right now is wedge. There's a maneuver selector, which lets you select the type of evasive maneuvers your craft are going to take. There is a stance selector for things like passive or aggressive. There's the WRTB button. And I'm not sure what this does. I assume it has something to do with return to base. The option selected here is SCOSH. I've had a look online. I've tried to look at some naval abbreviations and stuff. I can't find out what WRTB or SCOSH stand for, but there is a button for that, and SCOSH seems to be the default. There's a cohere button, which I believe is coherence within formation. There's a salvo button, so you can choose whether they launch everything or launch one or two. There's a range, I believe that's their engagement range selector. And then finally there is a selector for ATGT, which is currently set to all. Again, I have not been able to find an abbreviation for this. I don't know what ATGT stands for, but there is a button for that as well. A couple of other things to see is on the far right, past the little paper dolls for the aircraft, are a bingo number, which tells you how many minutes of flight time this ship has before it runs out of fuel. Which in this instance is tons. It can travel 8 kilometers, and then how long it has in combat, which is I think 5 minutes or 6 minutes 20, and then there's also just a fuel gauge there. You will notice that bingo time and that combat timer will change dramatically when the player activates high burn, which they will do in a second. But yeah, a lot to take in here, so I wanted to go through it sort of piece by piece. One thing I do find interesting is we know these skiffs are equipped with a radar, but there is no option to turn that radar on or off or to activate MCOM in any way. You'll notice now that the player has activated high burn, that the fuel gauges for all of these craft are now flashing. Their combat time has probably not changed very much because these aren't actually combat craft, but their speed has increased to 69 meters per second, which is very, very fast. And with the backdrop of a missile engagement that takes out a shuttle, our carrier player gets their bombers out into the field at this point. Couple of items here. The top cruise speed of a Sturgeon appears to be 79 meters per second, and each of them is carrying 2 torpedoes. And if we have a look at the Barracudas, their top speed appears to be 118 meters per second, and they each have a 20mm gun, a 35mm gun, a jamming pod, and 2 craft crasher missiles, which are really interesting loadouts. Watching how they're doing their loadouts and their launches, it appears their strategy here is to have a wing of bombers escorted by a wing of strike fighters, and the strike fighters are going out with a void superiority loadout, so their escort role really is to take out any incoming fighters, and I assume missiles that are trying to shoot down the bombers as they complete their mission. And if you pay attention to how they're launching their ships, they've basically selected the 3 capture points in the middle of the map, and they're sending a double wing of craft to each one to contest along with their allied ships. So this player is really playing a sort of support role with their carrier by kind of projecting force along the same routes that their allies are as well. Rather than leading the charge in one direction, they're spreading their forces out to be as useful as possible at as many locations as possible. If we take a second to have a look at the state of the game, Point C has been captured by the enemy. It's the first of the sort of middle points to be captured, so we're probably looking at having an engagement there pretty soon. And it looks like our player is kind of going in there unsupported. The majority of the OSP forces are pushing towards the A point in the middle of the map. There is some small ships in support, but I believe they're more sensor boats considering the contacts that we have available. So we just to see how that plays out. The Chaplain here, the skiff that we're looking at, does seem to have a very long radar range, and there's a burn through contact. I believe that's what that purple icon is showing us. So that's probably coming from one of those ships that's high above the battle space, coming in down on Point C. They've just been given attack orders on it, or possibly just facing orders on it if they've got the radar on the front of their hulls. But you can also notice how fast the high burn speed is affecting that first wing of Sturgeons that's been launched. They're already almost halfway out of their fuel, and they're still en route to the target point. So there we go. There's a missile attack coming in on C right now, and we still have so many craft in our carrier that it's a bit insane. They're still being launched constantly. They're going with the void superiority role primarily. Doesn't look like those missiles are going to hit anything, unfortunately. We've lost the radar lock. It's possible that those ships are remaneuvering and they're no longer painting the target correctly. Then at B, there's also a long-range engagement going on. We've got some good targets there. We've got something up high above the battlefield as well that's being picked up by those tugs too. So there's a lot going on. No real engagement yet. You can see that the groups 5 and 6 belonging to the carrier player have been detected by something. So that they are being painted by radar, so the enemy knows that they are incoming. And I wonder what the response is going to be. Groups 5 and 6 are continuing to burn pretty hard towards the C point, and we know that there's something at the back of C with that purple detected target. What we don't know, at least what I don't know at this point, is can craft actually capture a point, or do you need to have a ship there? Now, what just happened there very quickly is the jamming pods on the Barracudas turned in, and if you look at the contact coming in from the top of the screen, we have our first enemy craft contact, and quite a lot of stuff is popping up on the screen, so I'm actually going to pause things. Well, we'll keep it going live. So we've got the chevrons there are enemy craft. The carrier player is pulling back their craft. They're obviously not wanting that engagement. And you saw all of the jamming pods turn on. Those were all those little cones that appeared on the screen for a couple of seconds. They appear to have come on automatically when the craft were detected. So they are now coming in on C. The carrier player is pulling back from C. It looks like he's potentially vectoring. Yeah, he's vectoring the fighters off from the bombers. The bombers are burning back to base. In fact, you'll notice they've now been ordered to RTB. And a great example of multitasking, they are continuing to order stuff on the other side of the map while this engagement is potentially happening with their fighters. So you can see that Slashwing there has a missile inbound on it now. They're jamming it and they're attacking it with their weapons. The missiles are actually staging in quite quickly and then slowing down. So I believe that's a hybrid missile with a high speed first stage and a slower, more maneuverable second stage. And we haven't lost any craft. So they were able to deal with those missiles. They shot them down and destroyed them. In fact, no, have we lost one bomber? No, we haven't lost any bombers. The bombers are still RTB, they're almost out of fuel, so they'll be burning back as fast as they can until they run out of fuel, and then they'll travel at ordinary speed. But once you give them an RTB order, I believe they're no longer orderable. We've got another wing heading out towards B point, and we have the main push towards E point as well, which is currently captured. So we had a very interesting engagement there. The fighters and bombers got detected, and then here is another missile strike coming in on the fighters. You can see them trying to respond. The missiles are flying through them. It looks like they've managed to defeat that attack as well. The jamming pods seem to be doing a really good job against incoming missiles, although there's still stuff going around them. The bombers are now bingo. More missiles coming in. They're trying to be intercepted. I think it's actually a counter missile launch against them. Those red markers are potentially flares as well. I wonder who's firing the flares. And we're still launching more fighters from the main carrier. There's so much going on in this game at this point. You can see that the primary group have now actually lost one of the Barracudas. There's only 4 in that wing. That's group 6 if you're trying to pay attention. And now we have a whole ton of jamming going on, and it's just absolute radar soup. Very hard to keep an eye of. You'll see sometimes an icon appearing with a bunch of circles. That's actually to help you identify how many craft are in close proximity to each other when the view gets messy. Green circles representing your craft, red circles representing enemy craft. Looks like there's some strikes coming in nearby their skiff, which is currently scanning out the uncaptured A point. And the bombers, Group 5, are still en route back to the carrier. Group 6 are still sort of in combat. They've lost one of their number. Everyone else is still kind of doing their thing. Group 7 are very low on fuel as well. Looks like the fuel capacity for bombers is quite low. Maybe it might be because they're lugging around those torpedoes, but it does seem that that is giving them some issues with fuel. What else is happening? Looks like we've got a fighter-on-fighter engagement beginning now. Everyone is launching missiles. We just lost one Barracuda. Another one got very badly damaged. That fight is going on off-screen right now. The player isn't really paying much attention to it. There's more craft coming in on A point. You can see them by the chevrons there. So that's what's going to represent them on the radar view. Doing the best I can to read this, having not been too familiar with playing from the radar view this much. We've got a bombing run coming in on A point from Dozer Squadron. That's Group 10. They've actually taken quite a lot of damage. So one of those bombers is damaged. And now the Group 6 that were engaged earlier are on their way back to base, and that whole bomber wing just got wiped out. Looks like they were taking long-range missile and gunfire from whatever's near B point there. So that whole attack just got wiped out almost instantly, and you can see how fast craft can die when they're hit. Group 5 is now boarded the bomber, so the bomber boarded the carrier, so they're now back in base getting repaired and rearmed. Group 6 are RTB. Group 7 are RTB, which is they didn't actually get to do anything. We have 3 wings of fighters. Group 8 are currently engaged. I can't quite see where they are right now. I can see where Group 9 is, and there's a bomber wing, Group 7, that's pushing onto a target. Group Bombard on the right-hand side of the screen. Nope, they're being ordered back now. Potentially too risky, too far out of range. So much going on. This is great. Okay, so Group 6 have just taken... Yeah, Group 6 are RTB. They've taken quite a lot of damage. Looks like the strike fighters really aren't lasting very long if they're getting caught out by the wrong enemy hitting them. But you saw from earlier on, the strike fighters were able to defeat that missile attack very, very well with the jamming pods they had equipped to them. All of these skiffs are now starting to take damage as well. Just I think they're getting shot at. So we're actually launching a new skiff, and RT being the first one that was launched, Mason. It's coming back to base. And what else do we have here? So we're still scouting out whatever the radar track back near the 90 point is, 4739 there. And the bombers are making another push at it. That, I'm not sure what group that is. That's Group Ruby, which is Group 9. So that's actually a strike fighter group that are going in on that to find out what it is. Looks like there's a really big fight about to happen around the center of the map. The OSP have got a big group of monitors and 2 Ocellos up near that asteroid there, and we're launching the rest of our bombers. Unfortunately, a player just got disconnected from the game, but we'll see how this continues to play out. And you can see that just this is where knowing what your loadouts are and having them ready to go will be invaluable. So you don't have to really think about it. You can just launch the fighters that you need, get them out as quick as possible, because those fighters that were just ordered won't be available for a minute and a half. Just saw a shuttle take a torpedo, which is not great. We don't want that to happen. C point is still being held by something. We still haven't actually managed to work out what is over there. And Ruby Squadron are now flying out into the dark, chasing what look like Elant contacts, but we don't actually know exactly where they are. And whatever they're chasing may have gone dark as well, making it extra hard to pay attention to. They've found the enemy. I'm keeping an eye on the fleet tracker as well. Got 2 skiffs RTB. Group 6 is still RTB. They have found themselves a Corvette, and here comes a massive rocket attack on it. I'm assuming those are rockets and not missiles. That was a lot of damage. Now they're jamming it, and they just hit it with, I think that's the rocket explosion. I don't think that was a gun attack. I think they're coming in for a gun attack now, though. And then their ally is also coming in to support them. So that was a really good fighter strike. I think they managed to take that Corvette out. I'm not 100% sure. Group 8 are RTB. Group 10 has just launched. You can see how fast the skiff got out. The skiff is in the air already. And at the moment, capture points are in favor of the ANS. So they've currently winning this even with this massive amount of strike craft support. And whilst we have seen some strike craft from the ANS, I don't think we've seen a lot. It was maybe a flight of Tantos before that engaged the Barracudas. And I don't think I've seen any bombing runs. 9787 at the far right of the screen is a craft. I don't see any others at the moment. We've got a big push coming in on A point. No, not A point, the C point on the left-hand side of the screen here. There's a lot of stuff for this player to keep track of. Unfortunately, I didn't get any audio for this game, so we can't hear what their craft are saying. But yeah, C point is about to get engaged. We've got bombers coming in on C. We've got fighters coming in on C. Group 11 are moving in. That was a great shot of an asteroid. I'm trying to keep an eye on what's happening at sea while everything else is going around here, but there's a lot. We've got some craft detected. The craft are growing. We're down to 3 bombers left on the carrier. There are no skiffs left. Still quite a lot of Barracudas available, though. That's probably how this is going to play out as a war of attrition. I think the carrier player here is quite happy to fight costly battles against other craft, knowing that they will win the game with more. They've got 8 craft engaged versus what the game is estimating is 3 at the C point right now. I would love to see that fight in more detail. Looks like they've engaged and pulled back. I love seeing the jamming pods deploy. They're just these waves everywhere. And we've still got a big fight happening here. They're coming around the rock. Looks like the enemy are trying to use the rock to escape from the Barracudas. There's now a group coming in over the top and launching rockets. And I think they're going to win that engagement pretty nicely. It looks like they've wiped out the craft at C point with that double-pronged attack. That was really nice. Hitman Squadron, of course, getting the kill. Best squadron ever. There'll definitely be a Hitman Squadron when I'm playing. And it looks like a more traditional fight over the center of the map. It's really going to come down to the slugging match of ANS big ships versus OSP small blob. And that's quite a nasty fight. I wouldn't want to be in the middle of it. But let's have a look at what else is going on with the carrier side of things. There's a sprinter down there on A point they've now detected. We've got still all 4 skiffs. So all 4 skiffs are alive with 2 of them RTB. We've got a bomber group that's undamaged, that's coming back to base because it's out of fuel. And everyone else is actually looking very healthy and at decent amount of fuel. So it looks like they've managed to refill or replace the losses, as I mentioned before, in this kind of war of attrition style gameplay. And they are now in a position where they've got fighters en route to pretty much all locations to give that extra level of harassment and support and vision to their allies. You can see there's a bomber wing in the middle of this blob of monitors pushing towards the target. They're going to come around the rock here, and hopefully we're going to see a torpedo strike. This is Battery Squadron. It's Group 6. So if you pay attention to Group 6 on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see what their health is like. At the moment, they're fully at full health. They're burning as fast as they can, 92 meters per second. They each have 2 torpedoes, an SGT 300 ship smasher and an SGT 378. The player just turned off the 300. They're just going to fire their 378s. They're coming around the rock. They've just launched 3 torpedoes. You can see them firing off there. 1 torpedo still contained. Are they going to get out of here? One of them has taken a hit. Looks like they got a solid hit on whatever that target was. They're pulling back now. They've launched everything they've got. They just turned that second attack, that second missile on, and it fired. If you look at the top of the screen, 2 of them got through, 1 of them got through. So the missile engagement complete on the SG-3 300. 3 of them came through and hit. For the 378s, 2 of them got through, 1 of them was soft killed. And yeah, 2 of them were soft killed. So that's 5 torpedoes of 6 launched, I think. No, 7 torpedoes launched, 5 hit. That's a pretty good rate for those bombers, and it looks like all of the bombers have gotten away unscathed as well, which is very cool. As for controlling fighters, just while we're sort of in a bit of a lull here, it looks like exactly the same as piloting ships, but making use of waypoints seems to be very useful when you're in combat. So that's something to maybe practice while you're waiting for this expansion to come out. Is getting your waypointing down quickly, especially in 3 dimensions rather than traveling in 1. Still would love to know what RTB Scosh and ATGT all in stand for, but I guess we'll get there at some point. We've now flipped the points because of the engagement at C Charlie Point. The OSP now have the point advantage, and the onus is on the ANS to make a move here. I would say that C is pretty lightly defended. E is also incredibly lightly defended. Everything is kind of focused around the A and B points, with the A point being the focus for the fighting, which is actually something the ANS need to be very aware of because they already control A. They need to move this battle to one of the other points that they've lost. If they continue to just focus on the A point, they are going to lose over time. The OSP players definitely have a really good selection of radar and coverage. You can see that they've got constant vision on their enemies, and you can see now that there is a big push coming in on C point. Looks like a collection of ships and craft moving in towards C. The OSP have nothing on C, but they have 2 fighter squadrons nearby. There's also a whole ton of stuff over sort of between E and on the way to E, but they're not there yet. We've got another skiff coming back bingo. We've got the bomber squad that did that attack coming back bingo with the torpedo launch. Foxhound squadron is heading to C as well. So that's another squadron en route. So it looks like the carrier player is anticipating a big battle over C point and is trying to route as many craft as they can over there. One problem is they've kept their carrier very safe at the back of the battlefield, which means it's not likely to be sniped, but it does mean that the travel time for craft launched from it is now quite high, that the battle has moved sort of past the center line of the space. There's a lot of distance that the craft need to travel before they can actually get to a position where they can stage, and that is meaning the response time of the carrier player is slowing down a little bit. It may be that, maybe not for this particular, the Moorline carrier, but if you're running an escort carrier or something like that, you might want to be a little bit closer in, just so that your craft, when they're turning around, can get back into the fight a lot faster. Because what I think we're seeing here is the player is reacting to events that are happening now, but they won't actually be able to affect those events for a minute or so, and that is maybe going to change. Things can change a lot in a minute in this game. We've got a missile launch coming in on the craft. Yeah, there's a craft engagement happening with Hitman Squadron at C point, lots of jamming happening. 4 versus 2. It definitely looks like there's a huge numbers advantage for the OSP in terms of craft in this game. And I think we've got a bomber squadron there as well. Fencer squadron are up guarding the 2 shuttles that are pulling out, the 2 tugs that are pulling out. Hitman squadron are pulling out as well. We've got Foxhound squadron now finally getting into the battle space. I'm wondering if Hitman are a little bit low on ammo. Foxhound squadron coming in though. Foxhound are actually a bomber squadron. I need to get better at identifying these icons. Hitman launching more missiles again. There's definitely flares or something popping up because we're seeing all those hostile contacts around them, which were appearing out of nowhere. let's see how the bombing run from Foxhound. Foxhound are actually launching all of their torpedoes at quite long range. There's a torpedo strike now out from Foxhound. They have launched 5 torpedoes, 3 SGT-376s and 2 SGT-300s. They're coming in. I'm watching the top of the screen now, top left-hand corner, to see how that engagement goes since things are flying around. It'll tell us if we've got hits or not. Looks like they're flying through, but there is a target at the back there, track 1073. Engagement completely failed for the 3 torpedoes. Engagement failed for all torpedoes. So that long-range torpedo run, unlike the one we saw earlier, which was very close range, that whole torpedo run has just failed, unfortunately. Pretty big blow. Those bombers spent quite a lot of time fitting out, flying into the battle space, getting on target, launching, and now they have to RTB and rearm and do that whole thing again, which will take a little bit of time to turn around. Squadron 5 is taking a beating, but they are on their way home. I'm not sure where Squadron 5 is. I think they were around about the A point. It looks like the OSP response is shifting to C because that point is now flipped back to the ANS player perspective, and they are now controlling that point. I know this game is very much being played from the radar view, which is probably the more professional way to play, though the less exciting way to play. Also, there's an interesting loadout for those fighters. They have a whole ton of gun pods rather than lots of bombers and missiles, so I wonder if that's a dogfighting build. We're coming in with gun pods on the Sturgeons here as well. Yeah, that's what we're looking at. So there's a gun pod build on Sturgeons at the moment, which are the bombers. I'm getting that confused. You can tell this is the first time I've cast one of these games with these fighters. So we've got Dragoon Squadron coming out, Foxhounder on the way back, Hitman Squadron's on its way back. We've got the Blacksmith Skiff coming in, Checkmate Squadron, which is a bomber squadron, is on the way in. So we're kind of just turning around bombers here. The bombers are coming in, reloading and launching, coming in, reloading and launching. And the strike fighters are taking a little bit longer. They've got a little bit more of a staying power in the battle space compared to the bombers, which are just kind of dumping their loads and then getting out, which I guess makes sense. We're making a move with the carrier here. No, the carrier is worried about getting backstabbed by that target down there, 5410. They are launching some ships at it. In fact, I think they're taking fire at the moment. Yes, I believe the carrier is taking fire, or it has been damaged. No, it's low on munitions is what the warning is, but it is now shouting for help. But there's really absolutely nothing that the OSP have that can move in to protect that carrier right now. And if this carrier gets backstabbed, that's going to be pretty devastating. I don't actually know what happens to strike craft that are alive in the battle space when a carrier gets destroyed. Do you still have control of them, or do they all explode? Or I assume you get control until they run out of fuel, and then they just become static in space. We might be finding that out before the end of this video. Definitely going to be another push on 1073 at the moment. Sorry, at point C. And I think the carrier is trying to protect itself by launching everything it's got at that radar content that's coming in from below the map. What else have we got? Nothing else detected on C, but we know the enemy are there. That means Checkmate isn't picking anything up with its radar and its wake sensor. Very curious to see how that passive wake sensor works. There's an ANS ship visible, but not picked up on radar. You can see it there, tucked into the rock. It's a little bit hard to see, but there is an ANS ship using the rock as cover. There's a radar contact for a second. It's to the right of Gun 1. It's a Vauxhall. We'll see how the bombers do against this Vauxhall. They are attempting to make an attack run on it. They are getting ready to launch torpedoes. They've already fired off their main torpedoes. And now they're activating the secondary torpedoes. So it looks like this player has a waved approach to launching their torpedoes. They fire the 378s first, then the 300s. So I'm not sure what the makeup of those torpedoes are, but let's see how this torpedo strike goes. And yes, the missile cam is still in the game. Those missed. They were just at the last minute soft killed. That was very impressive. And the other ones have also been soft killed, or they're locked onto something else that we can't see that's down there. There is a craft down there firing at them. I'm not sure if they hit anything. No, the engagement failed. So there's some very clever soft kills, some electronic warfare there, disrupting all of those torpedo attacks. The carrier is not under fire at the moment, despite that target below the map. There's actually now 2 detected targets down there, and there's a fighter wing down there trying to find them. It's at the bottom of the map, though, so we can't really see it very well at the moment. Quite a lot of ANS activity are getting close to the B point, or underneath the B point at the moment. E point is undefended at this time. Everything that was there has been retasked over to the combat over the C point. So the OSP have left their back door a little bit open here. The carrier is very unprotected. If something were to swing around the back of the map, say for example that ship that we can now see, 5745, it could capture E and it could destroy the carrier, because that carrier can't really fight. It only has 2 T-30 cannons. Dragoon here taking lots of hits from missiles. Are they going to survive? They're group 11. That's Fencer, sorry. That's a cap shuttle. We're not too interested in that right now. There's engagement happening here with some craft. The Void fighters do seem to be doing a lot of work, they just managed to, well, they were trying to shoot down those incoming missiles. Now, okay, so I talked a little bit over myself, but basically there was an enemy missile strike on that tug, and the Void fighters tried to shoot down the missiles, and they got about half of them, but the rest of them still hit. We're now looking at a very low amount of bombers left by the looks of things for the OSP. They've got one wing that's RTB at the moment, and I don't think they've got much left in the ship. So we're now losing that ability to strike against larger ships. They're probably really good against corvettes and frigates still with strike fighters, but without the torpedoes on the bombers, and now those torpedo strikes haven't been particularly successful this game, they are losing that ability to project sort of around rocks like we're doing here and actually hit ships from unexpected angles with powerful weapons. I think part of the problem with that Vauxhall strike was they attacked towards the projected power of the Vauxhall, whatever ship was behind it, and that's why it was so easy to defeat that strike. They were probably just comms jammed pretty much straight away. Got missile strikes coming in from those two, from yellow squadron there, backed up by a fighter squadron attack as well. This is going to overwhelm the PD of whatever ship that is, no matter what it is. Look at the amount of fire that's coming out of it. Oh, it's a Vauxhall, and they're hitting it from behind. Not a Vauxhall, sorry, the Naxford. That's a lot of shots into the back of it. I don't know if that's going to do a lot of damage to a Naxford, but it's definitely going to scare the crew. That was a double strike fighter attack backed up by those tugs, which I think had size 2 missiles. It's hard to read. There's a lot going on here. What else have we got? I know this has kind of turned into a play-by-play. I've got sucked into the excitement of this game, but I think we went over the most important stuff at the start of the video, so I thought I'd just kind of turn into casting the end of this. What else have we got going on? So the points are now 4 in favor of the OSP. Even though I'm not thinking great on how the torpedo strikes have gone, it looks like the overwhelming strike fighter advantage has really helped tilt the balance here. Every time there's been an engagement, there's been fighters there to support that engagement, and I think that little extra firepower, that little extra ability to shoot down incoming missiles has really been helping that out. Here we can see another example of the strike fighters protecting these ships, although I think they're taking some big hits here. It's quite hard to read, but it looks like they're actually managing to avoid these missiles. And I think they came from the ship that's coming to support the Axford. Yeah, none of them died there, which is pretty amazing. There's some complaints about the jammers on craft. I'm gonna have to go back and just blur that out. But the ANS are not particularly happy about how powerful the jammers are on craft, so that's interesting to know. Maybe that's a good strategy to adopt when you pick this up for the first time. Is get some jammers on your craft ASAP. Group 12 actually did end up taking quite a lot of damage there. They've been engaged with this Axford for a while, and I think it's cutting them to pieces with its defenders, so they are now RTB. We have 2 bomber wings still in play. One of them is RTB Bingo. Group 10 is also now RTB Bingo. That was our last skiff that was in the combat area. And we've got a bomber wing Buzzsaw. That's Group 3 moving through the center of the map. They're chasing down a craft at the bottom of the map there, which is trying to run from them, and there's another bomber wing in pre-flight at the moment, so there are still quite a lot of bombers available. It's definitely quantity, not quality here, I think, on how this is playing out. That's not torpedoes they're firing. I think these have rocket pods, so these are actually rocket hits on this Vauxhall. I think they're size 3 rockets. Yeah, R3. They're size 3 rockets, which we haven't seen in the game before. The biggest rockets I think we've seen are size 2. So they're actually probably scarier than you might think they are, and I wonder what sort of damage they did to that Vauxhall, because there were a few hits there. Unguided is the advantage being that you can't really soft kill them in terms of jamming them, because they'll just keep going straight, and they won't move off course. So they could be quite valuable in an environment where there's a lot of powerful jamming and a lot of powerful distractions for guided missiles. The size 3 rockets could be very good. One thing I haven't seen in this game is any of the guided bombs or the bombs. Oh, we've got a flight of fighters coming in towards these double squadron down here. Let's see how this engagement goes. It looks like 2 or 3 fighters, not a lot. Unfortunately, the player playing has looked away from that particular engagement to see they've got a big blob of fighters over there actually that they need to reposition. The OSP are now in the lead in terms of capture points, but the ANS are now capturing B point. Not that it matters, because the OSP will still have a lead at that point. And that's a missile attack on the shuttle that's there. This is a Claymores. So this is, what's the Claymore again? Oh, did I call it a Harpoon earlier? I meant to call it a Claymore. It's a bomber. What else have we got? So yeah, big blob of fighters hanging around near D point. I think they're actually near the carrier. They're all kind of, I think, in the air traffic control queue waiting to land on the carrier. So that is probably a thing to be aware of, is you only have so many landing pads, you only have so many launch pads. So you have a lot of ships RTBing at once. They're going to have to just wait around for their turn to land, especially if you've also got takeoffs happening at the same time. That's going to additionally kind of make it a little bit harder for you to turn your ships around. So an advantage of the carrier, of this Moorline carrier, is it has a lot more landing bays than most ships, well, the other carriers will have. Still having a fight over on the right hand side of the screen there. It looks like the rest of the OSP fleet is chasing the ANS off the map. I hope they haven't overcommitted, but I think they're doing pretty well. And what else have we got? E-Point is potentially in danger of being captured. I think the carrier player has just spotted that as I spotted it. They are ordering an attack run on whatever that target is. They've got bombers sort of just hanging around, but they're waiting for these pre-flight bombers to launch. And we saw there that there's a post-flight as well, so there is a little bit of time before you can retask something once it lands, probably depending on how badly damaged it is. Looks like that shuttle was destroyed by that torpedo strike earlier, a missile strike earlier as well, the one down near B-Point. And looks like everything else is coming in to help out with the big monitor group that's over in the middle of the map. I feel like this game is wrapping up. We've got 842 points to the OSP, 748 to the ANS. They weren't able to capitalize on their early lead well enough, and I think the constant attacks from Strikecraft have really turned the tide here. That is the carrier now out of Sturgeons to launch. It has, Barracudas to launch. It has none left, which is crazy considering how many there were at the start of the game. I mean, there's quite a lot on the map at the moment, but there's none left in its hangar base. It has launched everything. And it's also burning into the middle of the map, which I think is a really good move from that player, so there's no chance of it getting back destroyed. Let's see. Yeah, E-Point is definitely going to get back capped. There's nothing that can really do anything about it. There is a bomber squadron en route. I think there's also going to be a fighter squadron to support it. We've got a lot of ships RTB right now as well, which are coming back in for repair and rearm. The rest of the OSP group is still engaged. There's a Solomon out in the open really far back, and whilst the Solomon is a powerful craft, I think being out in the open there is a bad place for it to be, so it can't make use of any cover to tank shots for it, or turn around, etc., change its armor facing. So I've got a feeling it might be picked to pieces while it's out there. There is a bombing run coming in on it, unsupported. I've got a feeling that bombing run may be a little bit optimistic, but we'll see, hopefully, if that gets through. We're up to 900 points now for the OSP as well. E is being capped, but they are also capping back A. That's a R3 rocket strike at extreme range. I don't know if the Solomon's going to be able to do anything about it. Looks like 5 of those hit. I don't know how much damage those R3 rockets are going to do, but I did not see any PD fire from that Solomon to try and defeat them, which is interesting. I wonder if they've got some sort of radar camouflage or something. And now we're going to see the bomber attack on point E. I don't wonder if we're going to get to see it up close or if they're going to keep it zoomed out. There's now a Cello moving in to attack that Solomon, and we have another push from Dragoon Wing, which is a strike fighter wing. They're now jamming up the Solomon with their jamming pods. So that's probably a really highly concentrated jamming at short range, and they're now launching their size 2 missiles, I think. KBU-22s is what I think they've just launched. 16 of them in flight. The torpedo strike from the bombers on whatever's at point E also just completed successfully. KBU-22s are still in the air. I'm not sure what launched them. Top left corner of the screen, you can see the 16 missiles in the air from something. They don't seem to have hit anything. It's not telling us the engagement is complete. It might be the Dragoons that are getting ready to fire them. I'm not sure. What else do we have? There's I'm definitely going to just blur out the text in the middle of the screen. That's not important for this video. And this definitely feels like the end of the game. Yeah, OSP are about to win. Everyone's giving their GGs. There's a big explosion to kind of finish things off. That confirms that this is definitely the modded map that I thought it was. So it's not a map mod that's being added to the game as far as I'm aware. And I think that's probably all we need to talk about in terms of the action. But I think the main thing we've seen here is how Strikecraft work at the start of the game, and some really interesting information as to how loadouts work, where there might be an advantage on having really quick to equip loadouts for early game gains, followed by maybe longer ones as the game goes on. And you've seen how powerful the force projection from this Moorline has been, but also that without the more conventional ships in the Navy, I think this ship would have had a much harder time doing what it has done, because obviously it needs to have ships to capture locations for them. Not sure what those were we saw flying through the middle of the map. They seem to be firing out jamming in lots of different directions. Maybe some sort of decoy bomb that the ANS have access to. Interesting thing to see. But I'm going to end this video here. I think that's enough. We can clearly see the OSP are going to win this one. And I hope you found this as interesting as I did. And I know it kind of turned into an exasperated cast of a game towards the end of it, but I got sucked into the drama of it, and I hope you did too. Thank you so much for watching this. This is pretty much the end of the extra content that I have for this update, but I hope you found it useful. I hope there's some information that you maybe are going to find really exciting for the expansion when it comes out. But for now, I'm going to fade out, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day, and ciao for now. See ya.